Hey everybody, and welcome back to my live stream. I'm Father Roderick, and my previous stream had some audio issues that turned my voice into that of a cyborg. I don't know exactly what happened. I had to reboot my Rodecaster. I guess it's like a USB type of hiccup. This should sound okay. If not, let me know in the comments. And I hope that those of you that were watching my previous attempt to go live will find the link to this new show or this new stream. We're going to have a lot of stuff to talk about. The main topic I wanted to address is the question, what's going on at Disney right now? We just heard the news that they were shutting down the hotel, the Star Wars hotel, the Galactic Star Cruiser experience in September, only a year and a half after it launched. They put like $30 million into developing this, and it's already at the end of its run. And now, just the other day, we heard that Disney is also going to remove a ton of television shows and movies from the Disney Plus channel, among which a high-profile production that they launched or that they presented only 6 months ago. And that's the Willow sequel, the television series that was based on the original Willow movie. And that they had high expectations of, and apparently didn't do that well. But why did they take it off the channel of Disney Plus? Now nobody can watch it. So I definitely want to talk about that, and I have some feelings about that, some strong feelings. And then, of course, we're going to talk about all the other stuff that I always integrate in my podcast. So we'll talk about books, talk about cooking, talk about recent news. There's always like a faith-related topic that where I try to explain some things based on questions from followers. We'll talk about technology. There's actually another Twitter competitor on the horizon, so that's going to be interesting. I have some ideas about that, and some feelings about where this whole, short message medium, this way of communicating will go in the near future. So, plenty of stuff to talk about. Feel free to chime in the chat room, say hi, let us know where you're from. Sometimes just random people pop in during the show. So make sure that everybody feels welcome. If there are any problems in the chat, I'll try to moderate this at the same time as I'm recording the show. Maybe that sometimes is a bit hard to keep all the plates in the air. I'll do my best. In case you want to listen to my audio show, you just go to Father Roderick or go to wherever you get your podcast and search for The Break with Father Roderick. That's the name of my podcast. And you will find an archive of weeks and weeks and weeks of listening material if you are interested in that. I also have another podcast called The Walk, which you can also find by just looking for The Walk with Father Roderick. That's a different show than this one. This one is more based on entertainment topics. And the other one is literally a walk where I record. Usually it's an outing in the woods, and I talk about more personal things and some life advice that I've gotten, and all that stuff. So hello, John. Good to see you. Thanks for listening since day one. That is wonderful. I hope life in Vermont is good. And Stephen is also there. He notified me that the audio was messed up in my previous live stream. So thank you again for notifying me before doing an entire show in a robotic voice. Sometimes that happens where, I just don't notice that something is wrong until after I record the show, which is unfortunate. All right, I've got some fancy new buttons and widgets, and hey Mike, good to see you. So I can now change camera perspective. I can actually zoom in a little bit like that, and I have another 2 buttons that I can press if I want to comment and react to a trailer, which is going to be super helpful for this show and for future shows whenever I want to show you what I'm actually watching at that very moment. So hopefully all goes well. There may be some hiccups, Actually, let me try out the sound of this and see if it's loud enough. Yeah, that sounds okay. Hey, Craig, good to see you. I'm also looking forward to watching Doctor Who on Disney Plus, and let's hope that they're not gonna pedal back on that plan, because everything seems to be in flux right now at Disney. But yeah, oh my gosh, I so want to watch Doctor Who, and I haven't seen the last 3 seasons now, so yeah. Anyway, I think I've got my ducks in a row. I hope so. Let's see if I got my show notes here in front of me, and then we'll just give it a go. Hello there, and welcome back to another episode of my podcast, The Break. I'm Father Roderick, and it is time to talk about a lot of different topics. I want to talk about what's going on at Disney. They are canceling, big productions here and there. What's going on? I have a lot of thoughts, and of course, all the other ingredients that you're used to hearing on this show. You know what my favorite part is of the Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit movies? It's that scene where you see Bilbo cooking a fish. He's at Bag End in his kitchen. He just had his encounter with this strange wizard who talked about an adventure, and he wasn't really interested in going on adventures because he's a hobbit. He likes his life the way it is, and is certainly not wanting to uproot it. And so after he said goodbye to this strange bearded wizard, he went back to his kitchen and started cooking a fish. And that's where the dwarves barge in and take over the kitchen, and there's a lot of cooking and eating and plundering of his pantry. And the reason that I love that sequence so much is that I feel very much for Bilbo. I like my kitchen as well. I like to cook for myself, sometimes for guests. I like the tranquility of just working with my hands. I'm, as you can imagine, most of the time sitting at a computer, or I'm carrying cameras, filming, or another recorder. I'm always busy with technological stuff. And when I'm in the kitchen, I can just focus on the smells and the tastes of what I'm making. And I love to explore. For me, it's also a way to try out new things and to learn in the process. And it makes me feel like a hobbit. Turns out my parishioners know me very well, because this morning after Mass, a lady came up to me and said that she had bought me a birthday present. However, my birthday was more than a month ago. It was on April the 5th. But she saw a book that she wanted to gift me, and then never got around to handing it over to me. So this Sunday after Mass, she said, I really want you to have this. I think you will like it. And I had no idea what to expect. So I unwrapped the gift, and I was surprised to find an elven cookbook. It's written to be a recipe book inspired by the elves of Tolkien. And she said, I saw this in a bookstore, and I immediately knew this was something for Father Roderick. And I couldn't be happier. This is so incredibly cool, because for me, Tolkien, the world of Tolkien, just has a lot of food in it. First breakfast, second breakfast, 11 C's, lunch, dinner. The hobbits like to cook. I like to cook. I feel a little bit like a hobbit myself. And now I have a cookbook that is inspired by all these adventures of Bilbo, who I think after he came back to the Shire, must have started to try to make the food that he had at Rivendell, and recipes that he learned along the way. And so this book is filled with incredibly look at the gorgeous photos. This is Gondolin rose petal jelly. And it has a little story connected to each and every recipe that also refers to the adventures of Bilbo and the elves. Look at this. I don't know what this is. These little dough balls with with a crispy coating and the insides fluffy and with juicy pieces of salt cod. These are delicious, served piping hot with aperitifs or as a starter. So these are called Fingolfin's salt cod fritters. There's Elwing's white pizza. I didn't know they had pizza in Middle-earth. That's yet another reason for me to migrate to Middle-earth. And then the thing that I really, really love discovering in this book is that there's actually a recipe for lambas. Koimas is the original lambas bread given to the elves by Orome for their journey westward across Middle-earth en route to Valinor. This Quenya word means life bread, implying its key role in sustaining and nurturing the elves during their long trek. The bread was made from the corn, the wheat of Yavanna, so it also seems to have had a sacred quality too. Something akin to the manna provided by God to the Israelites during their 40-year trek through the wilderness on their way to Canaan, the promised land. And of course, for Catholics, it's also a clear play on the whole theme of the Eucharist, which for Catholics is such an important sacrament because it's our nourishment. It is literally life-giving bread because it contains the giver of life himself, Jesus Christ. And so this is a recipe. It's of course not, Tolkien didn't write recipes, but this is based on how you maybe could make a dough and then cook it so that you create something akin to the lambas described in the books and what we also see in the movies. I can't wait to try all these recipes out. I'm so grateful. And now, of course, I wanted to know if there's also a Hobbit version of this and maybe even a Dwarven cookbook. This seems like a golden formula. And this is just one of these things where I love to have it as a book. I like my ebooks, but just look at these gorgeous photos. You can't have that on a Kindle. It's all in black and white and it's small. I can just put this in the kitchen. And just by looking at the pictures gives me the appetite of at least 12 dwarves at the same time. So I'm so thankful that every once in a while in my homilies I talk about Tolkien and Star Wars. And so my parishioners actually really get to know me quite well. And with that, let's move on.
How do you not like movies?
They're predictable. Like, the guy gets the girl and that kid sees dead people and Darth Vader is Luke's father.
Not liking movies is like not liking puppies.
They're fine. I just get bored and never make it to the end.
You know, you need a movie education. You need a movication. I'm gonna give it to you.
I want to talk about a new science fiction movie written and directed by none other than the writer and the director of one of my favorite Star Wars movies, Rogue One. I'm talking about Gareth Edwards. We haven't heard from him for a while, and of course, Rogue One was a very difficult production. Part of the script was being rewritten. It was changed over the course of the entire production process. However, it did result in a fantastic movie. And even though maybe other writers were involved in this, Gareth Edwards had this pitch of, let's do a serious war movie. Let's make Star Wars a bit more realistic. And I think that Andor, one of the best television series that we have, or one of the best stories ever told, I think, in the Star Wars galaxy, is based on what Rogue One established. And I hope that movie will always stay a source of inspiration for future Star Wars stories. I don't want all Star Wars to be like Rogue One or like Andor, but yeah, definitely give us more stories in that vein. So Gareth Edwards has now created a new science fiction movie, which of course has nothing to do with Star Wars. The trailer just came out, and so I want to react to that trailer live here on the show and share my thoughts on what we get to see. So the opening shot that's here at the beginning of the trailer already looks amazing. Let's take a look.
What's heaven?
It's a peaceful place in the sky.
Are you going to heaven?
Oh, wow.
No.
Why not?
Gorgeous
You gotta be
cinematography.
a good person to go to heaven.
years ago today,
Oh,
the
wow.
artificial intelligence created to protect us detonated a nuclear warhead in Los Angeles.
Oh, wow. Oh, so this is about the dangers of AI. That's very topical.
As long as AI is a threat, we will never stop hunting them.
Whoa.
This is a fight
What's
for our
that?
very existence.
This is filmed in...
Whatever's in there,
In
they're
London.
sure worried about someone getting in. Yeah,
That looked like Canary Wharf. Wow, look at the scope of this.
We're the same. We can't go to heaven. Because you're not good.
Wait a
And
minute.
I'm not a person.
AI is a child?
Did you
Whoa.
locate the weapon?
Yeah, it's a kid. Seatbelts.
What do you want with the child?
Wow. Oh, wow.
We are this close to winning the war. Execute her, or we go extinct.
Oh, there are more
They're coming to get me.
droids. Holy moly. Wow. The creator. September the 29th. That's when we will get to see. This looks amazing.
Resolve version
and
18.5
interesting as well.
is
Oh,
out, and
hold
there is
on.
a
I get
very,
it.
very
How do I stop this? The trailer just there was like another video that immediately started playing after this. So this looks fantastic. I'm blown away by the visuals, and I immediately noticed some religious themes in there as well. I mean, the child is clearly the symbol of new life, but it's a life that at the same time is a threat to humanity as it is. And then you have this dilemma. Should we protect this new life? Should we respect it? Or should we fight it? Which I think is basically what's going through everyone's mind now when we see how powerful AI already is and how quickly it's developing. Is what should we do? How should we relate to all these possibilities? Should there be regulation? Is this going to be ultimately a threat for us? Or is it the birth of something new and wonderful and something that can help us to make the world better? I love the themes. I like how this looks. There was one thing I read about the movie which completely shocked me, and that has to do with the production of this movie. Apparently, this entire movie, everything you saw in that trailer, was filmed, besides, of course, there being lots of CGI and special effects. But the cameras that they used were actually consumer-grade camera. It's the Sony FX3 that was used, which actually is another version of the Sony A7S III, which looks like a regular camera, like a photo camera. And I've been working with that camera. I don't own one myself because they're very expensive, but my cameraman has used that camera for about a year while I was working with him. And it's an amazing camera, but I never thought that the quality was so good that they would consider using it for a theatrical movie like this one. It looks fantastic. And it bumps that camera even higher up on my list of, potential future cameras that I may want to save for. But what a fantastic trailer. What a great concept. It looks amazing. And it's science fiction. What's not to like? Yeah, let's talk about Willow. I loved the movie Willow as a child when it came out. It was a fantasy production, but made by George Lucas, who, of course, we all knew and loved from Star Wars and from Indiana Jones. And then he had this idea, well, let's do something even even more fantasy-based. Of course, Star Wars, in a certain way, is a fairy tale, but he wanted to do something that's much closer to like the established fantasy language visually also. So he came up with this story about this small child called Willow who discovers magical powers and ultimately turns out to be the savior of the world, of the magical world in which he lives. And but it was a one-time movie. There was never any follow-up to that. It did pretty well, I think, in theaters, but I guess George Lucas was much more focused on Star Wars and on building his Skywalker Ranch and all that stuff. So he never got around to making any other stories in that universe until last year. I remember how amazed I was at the Star Wars Celebration in Anaheim when they showed us the trailer for a new television series, high profile, on Disney Plus that they had been filming during COVID, so in very difficult circumstances. And it was not filmed inside the Volume, which is this digital set that they'd been using for The Mandalorian, for the Book of Boba Fett. Now, a lot of these scenes for this new television series were filmed in the UK, in the woods, in beautiful places. And that trailer just blew everyone away. It looked so fantastic, and for a lot of us, it was like, oh, wow, we're going to be able to reconnect to our childhood and how amazing it is to have a platform like Disney Plus where you can do follow-ups like this and you expand stories that we know and love without the big financial risk of launching a movie after so many decades, which, if it fails, there's a lot of money going to waste. The television series, of course, is much more easy to stay within a budget. So Willow was launched. I don't know if I have a trailer of Willow here lined up. I think so. Let's go back in time and rewatch that trailer, because I think it just looked amazing. All right, here we go.
You think you know what is real and what isn't. What is light? What is dark? Now, forget all you know. Come with me. Willow.
We're looking for the sorcerer, Willow. I was told that once long ago you defeated the forces of evil.
You remind me of your mother.
My dear friend, I thought I could prevent all this. I was wrong.
My brother was abducted. The world needs you again. It needs your magic.
Follow me. We must go beyond the edge of our world, into the unknown.
Willow!
I need your help.
Just like old times. Attack! Running! Horses! Mayhem! Mayhem! Happy to see it.
Our true enemy is still out there, rallying the forces of evil. And the only thing standing in its path is us.
I'm going to enjoy this.
If you're thinking what I'm thinking, so am I.
I doubt that very much. Take him to my tent and make sure he's tied up.
I don't know. See, that kind of sounds like we're on the same page.
When I was a kid, I used to play at being a sorcerer. Visiting strange worlds, fighting monsters. Run! Never thought I'd actually really do it.
What the hell is that?
Trolls. I'm so miffed.
We have to hurry.
How will you defeat us?
Same as last time. With my friends.
That's how this was presented to all of us. I mean, what's not to like? Didn't this just look totally fantastic? I loved it when I saw this. It had fantastic music. The visuals were beautiful. It was super colorful. It seemed to have humor and action and big castles and magic. Oh my gosh, I was so looking forward to that series. We were presented with the new actors, the younger actors. Of course, there was Roderick Davis and some other returning characters and returning actors. And then you had a whole slew of new, younger characters that would be part of this new, not a reinvention, well, in a certain way, it was a reboot of Willow. And I couldn't wait until this was launched on Disney+. So I was, at the moment it launched, the first day, I watched the first 2 episodes, and I was a little bit surprised that I didn't like it as much as I thought I would. I still really liked the visuals, and the music was fine, but there was something awkward about the writing and the pacing of the series. It felt a bit forced. The humor didn't land. Even Warwick Davis, I love what he does, but his performance fell flat. It felt a bit spun out. I don't know if it was the editing or the writing, but it just wasn't as good as I hoped it would be. Plus, it had also a bit of kind of a forced... I don't know. It was as, we're not just telling a fantasy story. We also want to make sure that this series is representative of the diversity and all the cultural themes that we're currently all talking about. And Disney does this in a lot of recent productions. And in this case, again, it felt like, the story doesn't need this. I don't mind it, but it was a little bit on the nose. And it started to get in the way of good writing. My criticism of the first 2 episodes that I saw was similar to what I didn't like about Discovery. I loved the way it looked, Star Trek Discovery. I kind of really liked the writing and the interaction of the crew, but there was also this kind of like on the nose, forced, like, here is our cultural agenda that we also want to make sure you get this. And yeah, sometimes that got in the way of just good writing. So after 2 episodes, I just moved on. I was like, okay, it's on Disney Plus. I'll watch it some other time when I have some more. I've got bigger fish to fry. There are other series that I really want to watch first. But that's what I love about Disney Plus. You have this huge back catalog. I can always go back and watch this, and maybe the rest of the series won't be as bad. I just don't feel very motivated to. It didn't keep me on the edge of my seat. I don't know. It's just my personal experience here that I'm sharing. And then just the other day, we got word that Disney is now planning on taking Willow away. It's going to be taken off Disney Plus. It's going to disappear. And that's not the only television series, not the only production that they're going to cancel on Disney Plus. No, there's an entire list that has leaked out. All of that content will be removed from Disney Plus, not in a couple of months from now. It's not an advance warning, so you'd better get to watch this. No, it's in 5 days from now, as I'm recording this. On May the 25th, according to this news, Willow will be gone. And who knows for how long? Maybe it's gone forever. And so will all this other stuff. If you can Google for the list. And maybe there's even more that's going to be removed. Now, this all seems to be part of this whole reshuffling that Disney is currently doing. But it's a bit much, and it's all coming at the same time. Just this week, we heard that Disney World is closing down its premium Star Wars hotel experience. The Galactic Star Cruiser. You may have seen the video that I did about that on my YouTube channel. And so this, too, was a hugely promoted, high-profile new project of Disney in their theme parks, where you would be immersed in the world of Star Wars for 2 days for a price. It was very expensive. If you would take your family, you would easily have to pay like $5,000, $6,000 to $7,000 for just 2 days of being immersed in Star Wars. And a lot of people were like, yeah, love the idea, but that's not for me. This is way too expensive. So there was a misalignment of what Disney wanted to do, which is make a ton of money on their intellectual property, and what people actually expected a Star Wars experience like that to be. All of a sudden, it was like yeah, you want to come to this this gambling planet that is so reviled in the sequels, but there's nothing wrong with being rich as long as you give us, Disney, your money. But it seemed almost like a betrayal of what Star Wars is all about, where it's always about simple people like Luke Skywalker and Rey and Anakin, and they are poor, and then they get pulled into this adventure, and now all of a sudden only the super rich can be part of this Star Wars project. So, on the heels of that came this announcement that they're going to cancel their own intellectual property on Disney Plus, which they own. And one of the writers of Willow has reacted publicly, saying, this is just cruel. They only gave us 6 months, and now they're pulling it, and nobody can watch this anymore. And I totally feel for the writers, for the actors, for everyone who was involved in this project. We're talking about hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people who gave years of their life to create something beautiful. And maybe it's not to everyone's taste. It certainly was a bit disappointing to me, at least what I've seen of the series. But I was still planning on watching the rest of it and enjoy it for what it was. I mean, there's stuff in the trailer there that I certainly want to see. And now I won't be able to in a couple of days from now. What's the rationale behind that? According to the writer, this can't be about writing this off for tax purposes, which happened to the Batwoman or Batgirl movie that was completely finished and was going to be released on HBO Max, and then it got annihilated. Nobody's ever going to see the hard work of all these people that were involved in that big budget Batwoman or Batgirl movie. But since that movie wasn't released, they could write that off. So there was a purely financial reason for doing that. But that doesn't count for Willow because it's already been published. So they can't use this for tax purposes. So the only other reason that we can come up with is Disney doesn't want to pay residuals. So every time someone watches Willow, Disney will have to pay the people involved. They get a small cut, and it's not much. So sometimes it's just, for a writer, it can just be as little as $1 a month or something like that. And so it seems so petty that a big company like Disney with very deep pockets is nixing this big production just because they don't want to pay the writers and the actors any residuals. And this is in the middle of the writer's strike, where it is all about this. If you keep treating writers like this, you're killing the entertainment business. Because without writers, you don't have stories. You don't have a product. You cannot just rely on your back catalog to bring in new people. So what is Disney doing? I seriously don't understand it. I cannot come up, because we're probably not talking about a lot of money. It's the actors, it's the writers, and that's it. We're probably, I can understand that for maybe for some other series, what they will do is, okay, let's take this off our channel because it's not bringing in new subscriptions. That's what Disney wants. They just lost a whole bunch of viewers in, I think, in India and some other countries but those were people that were only subscribing to Disney Plus because of sports. And then they took off a number of sports programs and people started to leave the service en masse. This is not because in Europe or in the United States or Canada, people are unsubscribing because they don't like Willow or anything like that. No, it's so... Maybe what they will do is they will try to make some extra money by letting this be aired on other channels. So that would be logical, or not logical, but I could understand that. Maybe we'll make some more money if we can convince some other parties to pay us a lot of money to air the Willow TV show or some of these other movies that nobody's watching on Disney Plus. So we may as well try to find a bigger audience elsewhere, because on Disney Plus it's not helping us. I could understand that, but there's There is no mention of that. Disney has not said that they are going to do that. And so for us as loyal Disney Plus supporters, because I love Disney Plus. I love what Disney has been doing. And yes, I agree that maybe they've been trying to just do way too much. They're spending a ton of money. And there's just too much content to promote. This is one of the things that Bob Iger actually said when he was talking about why Disney Plus was incurring so many losses. He said, not only do we have to pour millions and millions into the production of new content that not necessarily always brings in new subscribers, but then we also have to promote all these movies and television shows, and we're spreading our budget, our promotional budget, so thin over all these productions that it doesn't work. So we rather have a few or fewer productions and then really promote the heck out of that and make sure that people will actually subscribe to Disney Plus because of those tentpole productions, and then stop doing the rest. But taking a series like Willow, no matter what you think of it, but a big tentpole production, to take that off your own channel without telling us where it goes seems pretty stupid to me. Because, a lot of people won't care that they won't be able to watch Willow because they weren't planning on watching it anyway. But this does threaten the trust that we have in our media platforms. Because in the past, you could still buy DVDs or Blu-rays, and you could watch it if you wanted to. You could bring some money to Disney or whoever was the owner of the series that was no longer on TV. But they don't make Blu-rays anymore of series like this. And so there is just no way to watch this once they take it offline. That makes me a bit queasy about the whole brand. It feels a bit like what Disney was trying to do years ago when they had the Vault. Remember that? They would try to artificially create scarcity by saying, "Oh, you can only buy the VHS cassette of Snow White, for instance, for the next year, and then it's going into the vault, and for 20 years you will not be able to see this movie anymore until we re-release it." And then that doesn't fly anymore nowadays. People will just find other means, legal or not, to watch this. But what it does is it makes Disney look like an unreliable partner. Not that I have a stake in Disney, but I want to feel that I am part of this whole new wave of creativity. I want to support the writers. I love what all these creative people are doing at Marvel and Lucasfilm and whatever other company is making this stuff for Disney, and this just feels like petty penny pinching at the expense of the creative people, of the writers, of the actors, and that just feels wrong, especially if it's done by a company with such deep pockets as Disney. This is what the writer's strike is about. This is why I support the writers in what they're trying to accomplish, and I think it is important for the future of the entire global entertainment business that we start thinking about, what it does to people. This is not just about money. It may be about money for the big companies like HBO, like Disney, but this is also about killing something something wonderful that was created by people who poured their heart and soul in this, and it just feels wrong to kill it. That's all I have to say. What do you think? Let me know. I'd love to hear your opinion on this. All right, let's move on.
Catholics rock!
It's that time again where we have to visit the peculiar bunch, these strange Catholics with all their strange rituals. What does it all mean?
Catholics can be a peculiar bunch. No meat on Friday.
Oh, meat? What do they eat? Light bulbs?
This morning, after Mass, I got complained by one of my parishioners who said, "Why don't we get rid of that darn frankincense? I hate it."
Man, you guys got more crazy rules than Blockbuster Video.
I'm totally honest. That person didn't say, why don't we get rid of that darn frankincense? But she said, I really don't like frankincense, and I was upset about it, but I think after Mass, I got the grace of just letting go of that. So I'll just, it's never going to be my thing, but I won't be upset about it anymore. However, it's a legit question. Why do we use frankincense? I know a lot of people that don't like it. And the moment I use frankincense, every time some people will start coughing, even if they just see it, they may not be anywhere near the frankincense. But as soon as they see the smoke around the altar, they start coughing and they start like, their breathing gets, and maybe for a very legitimate reason. Maybe it is because they have asthma. They might have an infection of their lungs or whatever. But for some other people, it's just almost like a Pavlov reaction. They see the frankincense, they have such bad associations with the smoke and what that does to their lungs that they'd rather have the Catholic Church completely get rid of frankincense. And to a certain extent, I have to say, I understand. I know how they feel. When I was an altar boy, and I've been an altar boy since the age of 8 until the age of 18. So for more than 10 years, I've served Mass every single Sunday. And oftentimes I would serve multiple Masses. I would arrive at 9 o'clock and I would serve 3 Masses in a row because I just enjoyed it. And there was always the, let's say, old-fashioned pastor that we had called it the High Mass, which is a term more before the liturgical changes during the Second Vatican Council. But anyway, during High Mass, there was always a beautiful choir, and we would use lots of frankincense. And I was one of the acolytes who knew how to handle that. And so I was always handling the frankincense. During the Eucharistic prayer, I would kneel in front of the altar. And then when the priest would lift up the host and the chalice, I would just wave the frankincense. And for the rest of the prayer, we were stuck there on our knees, and the smoke would just completely envelop me. And I hated it. I really, really couldn't understand why the church used frankincense. I mean, I like the process of making a fire and then just trying to light up this coal and just the magic of using something physical like this in liturgy. But I totally abhorred the smell, and it made me cough. And to be honest, I think it probably damaged my lungs because we've discovered that there are actually cancerous materials in the frankincense, in the smoke. It's not good for you. Like any smoke is bad for you, and so is frankincense. So, yeah, in hindsight, probably wasn't a good idea to be so close to all that smoke for years and years and years of my life when my lungs were still developing. So why do we still use it? I have some thoughts. So first of all, frankincense is all over the Bible, and not just in the Jewish tradition and later on the Christian tradition, but it's also used in many other religions and in other rituals. We have countless stories of frankincense being used by the Greeks, by the Romans. They would use it sometimes in the sanctuaries. Like Delphi, you would have these ladies that were supposed to be mediums between this world and, the invisible world, and they would inhale frankincense to get high, probably. And they would get visions, and they would be overwhelmed by this powerful smoke, and then they would start to say strange things, and then there were interpreters that would tell us, well, these are messages from the beyond. And, frankincense played a big role in that. Frankincense was also used in sacrificial settings, where and this also predates, of course, the Christian tradition and the Jewish tradition. People would bring offerings to an altar, and these animals usually, or sometimes it would be bread or food, all that would be cut into pieces and burned. And then the smoke from that sacrifice would, of course, raise to the heavens. And that was seen as a way in which you could reach what is above us in a very physical way. You could just bring an offering that would be burned, and then you would, at least the smoke and the smell of the animal that you sacrificed would maybe reach the gods, and then the gods may reward you for that sacrifice. And later on in the Christian tradition, frankincense was used almost as a symbol of those old sacrificial rituals where, the smoke was seen as a symbol of our prayers that we lift up to God, and we hope that God somehow hears us and will respond to us and will help us. And so frankincense has been used for centuries in the Catholic tradition, in the Christian tradition, and in many other religions. So it's I think that by itself should be a reason to not get rid of it, because it's such an ancient tradition, and it becomes very hard to understand some of the stuff you read in the Bible if you've never seen frankincense, if it's completely gone and no longer used in our rituals. But I have a second thought, and that is there are many different types of frankincense, and there are also certain ways in which this ritual is performed that doesn't really do what frankincense is supposed to do. Like if you abhor frankincense, and I know that some of you really hate it, and maybe it will make you start coughing and it makes you unwell, maybe the experience that you've had is because they were using very cheap frankincense, because frankincense was supposed to be a super expensive thing. It was important from the Middle East, and it was used for very, very special occasions, and cost a ton of money. So, but then, of course, in the Catholic Church, it's used all over the world. We cannot afford to pay a lot of money for this. We still want frankincense, so what we get is kind of this industrial, almost derivative type of frankincense, which has almost nothing to do with the frankincense that we hear about in these ancient stories. So it's mass produced. It's made with pretty cheap ingredients. The production process is still the same as for any other type of frankincense, but the ingredients are just cheap, and so it doesn't smell very good. And the second, maybe even bigger problem is that a lot of people nowadays don't know how to burn frankincense. The thing is, frankincense itself is supposed to be kept very dry and preferably in an airtight container, the same way in which you would preserve your coffee. Nobody is just going to put coffee in a jar and then just open the lid and let it sit there in your cupboard for weeks. It will lose all its fragrance and taste, and it could even get moldy because it, of course, becomes humid. The same happens with frankincense. If you don't put it in airtight containers, if you don't store it in a dry and warm place, the frankincense itself, these beads, will start to become humid. And you notice when you burn wood that is not dry, when there's still moisture inside a log of wood, what happens? You get a lot of smoke. And the smoke is suffocating and bad for you. The same thing happens with frankincense. And I've witnessed this for years and years and years. In most parishes, they don't know how to store their frankincense. Plus, they have the cheap stuff. I have experienced what frankincense can also smell like in the Holy Land when I was on a pilgrimage there. And in the churches there, they would use a very different type of frankincense. They looked almost like candy, there were these white balls, and it was almost as if they were covered in powdered sugar. And they would only use one of those crystals or whatever it was, put them on a very hot, white-hot piece of coal, and then it would start to smell, and you would see only a little bit of smoke. But you would smell flowers. You would smell roses. And it was like, wait a minute, where does this come from? Is that coming from that one little block of white stuff? And it was a revelation to me. It's like, if people would know that this is actually what frankincense is supposed to smell like, then I think a lot of people would change their opinion on frankincense. So that is why I believe that, yes, I'm all in favor of maintaining the practice of using frankincense in the Catholic liturgy. However, I would say, let's invest in this. Let's make sure that whenever you use frankincense, and you don't use it every single day, you can, but I would say keep it for special occasions. And then pay a little bit more and make sure that it's the good stuff and that it's well preserved, and that when people smell it, they will understand why when the wise men visit Mary and Joseph and their newborn child Jesus, they offer frankincense. But it's the good stuff. it's not. Imagine if Joseph and Mary would have had the frankincense that we use in our funeral services and in our churches. They would probably send a letter to these magi, please never come back. And what were you thinking? Our fragile little child, and then this putrid smoke, please. If we'd known, we would have never opened the door. But no, the frankincense was such an incredible gift and such a valuable symbolic gift. Why do we forget that whenever we celebrate the liturgy, we have to make sure that we go for quality? And this applies to everything in liturgy. So much of our liturgical problems are, I think, due to the fact that we are so easy to please. We think that, it's okay to have ho-hum liturgy. When we have choirs that are unable to really sing what they have on their repertoire, instead of trying to improve the choir or sing something simpler, no, we still think it's okay if it sounds terrible, because let's just look at the effort that people put into it. Sure, I mean, I don't want liturgy to be just for the rich people, and it always has to be amazing. And no, not everybody can. But you can keep it simple and still stylish, as long as you put your maximum effort in it and make sure that liturgy, even Saint Francis, who of course was, the saint who rediscovered how important poverty is in the church as a virtue, even he would invest in the liturgy. And he would make sure that the vestments and the chalices were made of high value materials, because he knew that, yes, for your personal life, you may choose a life of poverty, but for God, only the good is good enough. Only the best is good enough. So I think that is true also for frankincense. And well, I would say try it. Nowadays on the internet, you can order good quality frankincense from the Holy Land or other countries. Just try it out and see if people will change their mind when they experience what it's actually supposed to be like.
When did you become an expert in thermonuclear astrophysics?
Last night. The packet. The extraction theory papers. Am I the only one who did the reading?
I love historical novels, and I've read Pillars of the Earth a while ago, and while it wasn't the best book, it was still a riveting read, and I love to be taken to the Middle Ages and experience what those times were like through a fictional story, and to learn about how they made the cathedrals and everything, and about the politics and the monks versus the kings, and I just love that story. And so the other day I read a novel that has been on my reading list, without exaggeration, for almost 50 years. This book was written in the 70s, in 1973, if I'm not mistaken, so 5 years after I was born, by a Dutch female children's book writer. And the book was called Kruistocht in Spijkerbroek. That's a Dutch title. It translated in English, it is A Crusade in Jeans. And it tells the story of a boy who travels back in time. This is way before Back to the Future. At the time, that was a pretty innovative idea. So this boy from Rotterdam travels back in time and ends up in the Middle Ages. And he becomes part of a crusade where the pilgrims consist almost entirely of children, very vulnerable children. And there are about 30,000 of them that are trying to walk to the Holy Land. And they believe that they are on a mission from God. This book was very popular when I was in school, but I never read it. And I still don't understand why, because I read almost everything. I guess I was probably being too busy rereading Charlie and the Chocolate Factory for the 100th time, or maybe The Wizard of Oz, which is also one of those books that I just read over and over and over again. So, or maybe there was just one copy of the book in our school library, and because it was so popular, it was always, you could never find it in the library. I don't know what the reason was. I just never got around reading it. And now, 50 years later, I finally read it in Dutch, and I loved it. It's a story that still completely works. Even though the beginning and the end, like the science fiction part of it, where the kid steps into this time machine, all that is almost glanced over. You would tell that part of the story very differently nowadays. It almost feels like, okay, there's this kid, hey, a time machine, let's go to the Middle Ages. But then the central story, which is 95% of the book, is written very well, and you feel like you're there and you experience these historical events, because this is actually based on... I'll get to that in a minute. We'll talk about what is fact and what is maybe the stuff of legends and fiction in this story. Were there really, children's crusades? That sounds so cruel, but hey, it's the Middle Ages, so who knows? But anyway, before I want to talk about that, I wanted to play a trailer of a movie that was based on this book, and it was filmed in English. Back then, it was one of the most expensive Dutch productions. Nowadays, the Dutch are actually pretty prolific when it comes to internationally acclaimed movies. Back then, Dutch movies were seen as a bit of a waste of money because, who's going to watch movies? The Dutch market for theatrical releases is so small. This is one of the reasons that they actually wanted to make this movie in English. And so all the kids that are playing in the movies, they had to learn their lines in English, and a lot of them were Dutch, because they were hoping that this movie would have an international success. I don't actually know how successful it was. What I do know is that it is no longer there. I cannot find it on any of the streaming platforms. I don't even think that there is a Blu-ray available of the movie. And so the only way that I can watch this movie is probably by trying to find a secondhand DVD. And that also is starting to become really problematic nowadays because, who makes money by selling DVDs? It's almost, even on Amazon, I think they have like one copy of the DVD and it's outrageously expensive. And yet, the trailer actually looks intriguing, and I would really hope that one of these streaming platforms will release this, because I think it's an awesome story. Anyway, let's take a look at the trailer first, and then we'll talk some more about the history behind this story. Here we go. It's a very low resolution
in
trailer.
12, the people of Rottweil witnessed a miracle. 10,000 loaves of bread were baked by one boy, the son of the Duke of Rotterdam.
So?
But Rotterdam didn't exist in 1212.
Het zou de dag van zijn leven worden.
This is in Dutch. It would be the day of his life.
What are you doing out there? And now Holland has to wait 4 more years for another chance.
So they spent more time showing us the life of this boy before he traveled back in time. Here he goes back into the time machine and
Is plotseling alles anders.
all of a sudden everything is different.
What? He wanted to replay the football match.
Crap. I'm in the 13th century.
The
Travels
army
back
of
to
the
1212.
Children's Crusade led by Nicholas of Cologne.
Did they run out of knights?
There is no way back.
I'm not supposed to be here.
How do you know that?
Trust me.
Moet Dolph laten zien wat hij waard is.
Now Dolph has to show what he's worth.
They're not going to make it to Jerusalem.
Be careful what you say.
In een strijd tussen goed en kwaad.
It's a battle between good and evil.
Have you really thought about this?
My name is Rudolf Vega, son of the Duke of Rostov.
Based on the book by Thea Beckman.
Where do you really come from?
Jerusalem is suffering. Jerusalem can
Courage.
wait. How dare you?
Friendship. Treason. Love.
Kruistocht in Spijkerbroek.
Crusade.
Do you believe in miracles?
In jeans.
You are a miracle to me.
15 november in de bioscoop.
So this was in movie theaters in the Netherlands in 2006, and I did not see it in theaters, and I so regret it, because let's be honest, even though this is a very low resolution trailer, it still looked really good, and I think I would watch this even over Willow, because it just feels like a big budget Hollywood movie. And it's taking place in a very interesting time in history. So let's talk about what is it with these Crusades? Of course, you know the history of the Crusades themselves. This went on. There were multiple Crusades to the Holy Land, and the idea was we need to make sure that the Holy Land isn't conquered by the Muslims, and that all these sacred places where so much of our Christian history has its roots, are no longer attainable, or you cannot travel there anymore. It's not safe, and even those sacred places may be destroyed by people that don't really care that much for those Christian stories. So often sanctioned by popes, armies would travel to the Holy Land, trying to conquer Jerusalem and all these other sacred places. Now, of course, if you've had history lessons in school, oftentimes those crusades are depicted as maybe one of the worst examples of what the church has done in the history of mankind, because it was, of course, cruel. It was intolerant towards Muslims. It was maybe just a pretense to conquer and to have power over those lands, and maybe the religious aspect of it was just an excuse to go to war. Now, the actual history of the Crusades and how they took place is often simplified, and there's much more to say about these Crusades. And there are some excellent books written about them, and some of them are actually also on my reading list. So I'm sure that this is a topic that I will revisit in the future here on the show. But what about these children's Crusades? Well, it turns out that the Children's Crusades as such were only mentioned by very few sources that are contemporary to the events that these stories talk about. So we're talking about the year 2012, about the year 1212, I should say. And according to historic research, there were actually, in fact, two, you could say, rogue crusades that were taking place, where people joined from all sorts of ages and backgrounds. One started in Germany, and the other one started in France. And the one that this book talks about is the one that was led from Germany. And according to these sources, like these medieval sources, the idea was kind of the same as what the story of Crusade in Jeans talks about. A young boy would get visions and revelations, and God would tell this, I think it was in France, it was a shepherd boy, only 12 years old, that he was to lead people to the Holy Land to make sure it was safe from the Muslims. And of course, in order to get there quickly without having to travel through so many different countries, the fastest way was to go to Italy and then cross the sea. And according to the prophecies of this boy, God would split the sea in two, just like he had done with the Red Sea and Moses. So God would make sure that they could travel from the coast of Italy to the Holy Land directly. So it would be feasible. And tens of thousands of people believed it. However, these people that went on that crusade were probably not children. In fact, the Latin word, and a lot of these sources, historical sources, were written in Latin, was the word for children is pueri. But there are similar words in medieval Latin that actually don't necessarily indicate children, but more like the people without power, the small ones. When Jesus talks about the small ones, he's not just talking about children. He's talking about anyone who is not powerful, who's not rich, who is maybe sick and discarded. And those crusades were actually consisted of a lot of poor people that were hoping that maybe this is their way out of poverty. Maybe if we follow this child who's clearly touched by God, God will give us a reward and he will bring us to the Holy Land, and maybe we can just stay there and it can become our new dwelling place. And so the reality was that these people were duped. Maybe not necessarily on purpose, but what happened is when they arrived in Italy, the miracle did not happen. The sea did not split in two. And that's, of course, when all hell breaks loose. And then there were some very evil commercial, or you could say almost pirates, and they would offer these poor people passageway on their ships. They said, "We will bring you to the Holy Land," but instead, they would go straight to Tunisia or to other countries, and all these poor duped pilgrims would be sold as slaves. And there is no historical record of any of these crusaders ever reaching the Holy Land. Furthermore, these crusades, even though they were called crusades in those tales, weren't officially sanctioned by the Pope. In fact, I think it was Innocent III actually condemned those crusades and said that anyone who would partake in those crusades of the poor was considered to be excommunicated. And the Pope even tried to convince people to return home, to not travel to the Holy Land. Maybe because he had gotten word of that they would maybe end in slavery. And so the book itself is interesting because it contains so many historical facts as a basis for what is ultimately a fictional story. And it's also what I liked about the book is it tells the whole event from the perspective of a boy who is actually not a Christian. He's never been brought up religiously, and so he hears about this. He even meets this shepherd boy who has these visions, and he's like, "Yeah, of course there has to be another explanation for this," and he doesn't trust it. And of course, his instincts prove to be right. At the same time, he also learns to respect the faith of these children and their prayers and their hopes. So it's I think a very balanced story. And ultimately, when he discovers that these children may end up as slaves, he actually takes the lead and starts to try to prevent this disaster from happening and saves a lot of these children. Anyway, I just spoiled the entire story for you, but it was a super enjoyable read. And again, I hope that one day we will get to see this movie on streaming platforms. And since it's in English, all of you could enjoy it, because I don't even know if there's an English translation of the book, but there probably should be. But also that one was hard to find online. Maybe if you know of an ebook in English, let me know and I'll plug it on the next episode of the show.
We are on the cutting edge of technology.
Wow. Well, what does that mean?
Just plug it in. It's going to say, hey, I see you plugged in a new device. And it's going to load in the appropriate drivers. You'll notice that this scanner build... Whoa.
Well, all your technology stuff, it just ends in disaster.
But there is one more thing.
All right. We need to talk about technology and video games. Let's start with video games. I'm always on the lookout for cool new games that I can try out. And one of my favorite genres is actually racing games. Maybe it's because I don't have a car. And on my bike, I'm always pretty slow because I'm not really a natural born biker. But I do like video games that let me race. And so I was super excited to discover that there is a new racing game, but it's with Lego. It's called Lego 2K Drive. It's out on Xbox and probably also on PlayStation and on PC, although I didn't check that. Maybe also on the Nintendo Switch. And it actually looks pretty cool. So let's go and check out the trailer. Here it is.
Racing is everywhere in Big Butte. Show 'em how it's done. Boom! Touch the sky! That was awesome! Weaving in and out of the great stone monuments.
Awesome. Everything's
surging
awesome.
along the dazzling waterways and tearing up the town with friendly competition. You're on fire, Hotshot.
Dang it! Thanks to you, blockheads, I actually have to try this time. Oh, I'm going to smash you good for no apparent reason.
You really think you can beat me? Silky smooth.
The claws are coming out. Meow.
I've got horsepower. Giddy up. Come on, Hotshot. Let's get back out there and show the world what you can really do.
Building, exploring, destruction, and racing. Everything is awesome. And then a cow is abducted by a UFO for some undisclosed reason. Oh my gosh. I think this looks really awesome. And I hope that they will bring this to Microsoft Game Pass so I can play it, because I maybe will not pick this up for full price. But I will certainly, one day I will play this. What I like about this is it actually looks pretty good as a racing game. It reminds me a bit of, there was this Nintendo game with Sonic the Hedgehog. But it was, you were racing, and it was a bit like Nintendo carts. You could push other cars off the road, but it had one thing that Mario Kart didn't have. You could transform on the fly into an airplane or a boat. So you would not only be racing on roads, but also you go through roads. Where we go, we don't need roads. We have waterways. We have, you could fly in the sky. And I love that game. This looks to me heavily inspired by it. The cool thing is, one, it has a story mode. So all the cutscenes that you heard is actually part of an entire story that is the basis for the game. So the further you progress, the more you get to see of the story. And there is also an evil guy who is, of course, the nemesis of the story, and apparently is super funny. And the second thing that is very cool is that you can actually create your own vehicles. You can build as if you were building with Lego. You can use anything available in the big Lego catalog to build your own ship, your own car, airplane, boat, and whatnot. And that, of course, is an aspect that is super cool. And I bet you that a lot of people that will play this game will spend more time on building their vehicles than actually racing with them. So yeah, I love it. 2K Drive, Lego 2K Drive. Let me know if you have played the game. I'd love to hear how it is. We also need to talk about other types of technology. Especially, I want to talk a little bit about the future of short messages, short text messages. You all have followed, of course, the developments at Twitter and how it's very much in turmoil. Still is. There's almost, it seems to have calmed down a little bit, but for weeks and weeks and weeks, every time it's like, oh my gosh, can it get any worse? What's happening to Twitter? What is Elon Musk actually? What is his master plan, or is there even a plan? And so more and more people, and I'm one of them, we're exploring other options, alternatives. I ended up on Mastodon and still really like it there. It's similar to Twitter, but it's also a bit more small scale. And it takes more time to figure out how it works. But I have actually a ton of interesting columns, columns with different topics that I'm following. So it works almost the same as TweetDeck. And I have a small but very interesting group of followers and people that I follow. And so I go there every day to get my fix of updates. It still misses a few key players, and especially like big media companies. Although a number of news agencies already have made the switch, or also are now on Mastodon. So as a source of news, it also becomes more and more interesting. What I like about Mastodon, of course, is not one single entity that controls it, which is kind of the flaw of Twitter. All the moderation has to be done by Twitter itself. And so if the boss decides that we're no longer going to moderate, and I'm just going to let a lot of people on there of, let's say, questionable background, there's nothing you can do. It's commercial enterprise. With Mastodon, anyone can start a Mastodon instance, and so the whole moderation is outsourced to the owners of that particular instance. So if you have a Mastodon server, you can set up your own rules. You can say, I don't want. For instance, there's a Catholic Mastodon instance, and they are very good at moderating and making sure that it is a safe place where people are not constantly attacked, which is unfortunately one of the issues on Twitter for people of faith. It's often a place where you get a lot of harassment. One of the big players that wants to get a piece of the pie is Meta. Meta, of course, formerly known as Facebook, also owns WhatsApp and Instagram and a number of other platforms. And the moment Twitter started to become even more controversial, they started working on their own alternative to Twitter. And apparently, it's almost ready for release. It doesn't have a name yet, but we already have some official statements about what this platform will what it will look like and how it will fit into the overall media landscape. And so what we know is that it is going to be based mostly on Instagram, which I think is a very smart move, because Instagram is still, even though there's a lot of controversy about recent changes that Meta makes, and it seems to be constantly in flux, but it still has millions and millions and millions of active users. And so apparently this Twitter alternative is going to use the same audiences. If you are already on Instagram and you move over to that short text platform, you can bring along all your followers. Also, people you have blocked, and unfortunately sometimes you have to do that on Instagram, that will also move with you to Instagram, or to the Instagram short form, whatever clone it is. So I think that's a very smart move, because still, even though with all its quirks, Instagram is still, for a lot of influencers, a very important place to be active. They have large followings, and so they get a head start, which Mastodon, of course, doesn't have. Mastodon used to be very fringe, and it's only recently that it started to grow. And then the second smart thing that Meta is doing is it is opening it up to Mastodon users and anyone who's using this open platform protocol. So if I'm only on Mastodon, I can still follow people that are on the Instagram Meta platform, and hopefully also vice versa, although I'm not sure of that. But they make sure that they open it up to users that are on other platforms. You're not in prison once you decide to focus on this new platform. Now, I don't know, again, how much of this is going both ways, but I applaud them for opening this up and using this open protocol, which maybe also be just a smart business move, because then you get all the Mastodon users also at least trying to connect with the people that are using your Meta platform. There are a few leaked screenshots of the app, and it looks very similar to Twitter. You'll be able to post photos as well as 5-minute videos. And so they also try to tap into that, the Reels and the TikTok competition. And if TikTok ultimately will end up getting banned, which of course is still not sure at all, Meta wants to make sure that they have a head start and they have an alternative for all those people that are making short form content. Very smart. Now, I wonder if Google is going to also come up with an alternative. I don't know if they're going to jump on this bandwagon. They've tried so many things in the past and then abandoned it just as quickly. But I think it's a good thing that we have choices, that we're no longer stuck to this one particular platform that is owned by one person who can basically do anything he wants. If we want to have an open forum, we need to make sure that everyone can participate in this global conversation, and at the same time there are safeguards, that people can be safe, that there is no harassment, that you can set rules and enforce them. So yeah, I have not faith in Meta, I couldn't say that, but I have high hopes for the future of short form communication. And the more players, the merrier, because they will try to compete, and that will keep everybody sharp. And with that, it is time to wrap things up. Thank you so much for your time and for your participation in making this show. I want to do a special shout out to all my patrons, the people that support me on a monthly basis with their micro donations. And I want to mention by name a new patron, Theodore Jackson, who joined this past week. Thank you so much, and welcome to my Patreon community. Welcome also to the Discord server. And I also want to make shout out to Scott Staub, who moved up to a higher tier. So he's having a little bit more available. He has more resources to support me a little bit more. If you want to join that wonderful Patreon community, take a look at patreon.com/Father Roderick. You can already become a patron and join the Discord community for as little as $2.50 per month. So don't let that stop you. Thanks again for the privilege of your time. Let me know in the comments and on my socials what you think. If you have any suggestions and questions, you know how to reach me. And we'll talk soon. Take care. Have a good preparation for Pentecost next week. And may the Force be with you. I like to have my own piano man in the corner who is, you can't see him, but he's playing the piano there. No, just kidding. Anyway, hope that worked. I have to say that this was already a much smoother ride compared to last week when I was trying to do the various cameras and showing the trailers. But I think this worked. Last week I had a problem. Oh, maybe there still was a problem with the sound duplicating. Let me check. Maybe, I hope I didn't forget to turn that off. Uh-oh, now I'm starting to worry because I made a change and when I got the audio problems. Oh no, thankfully I put on the system output mix mode. So last week, the sound of the trailers was duplicated because I, of course, also recording the podcast on the Rodecaster, and it was routing this audio back into the computer. So every trailer that I played ended up, at least on YouTube, to have like this weird echo. But I think this time I should be okay, which then allows me to take parts of this podcast and cut them up into individual videos and post those during the week. So I tried that with a number of segments last week, and that did okay. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to post my reaction to the June trailer because the moment I did, I got hit with a copyright strike. Thank you for preventing me to promote your movie. The rationale of Warner, it's beyond me. And it's the same with Paramount. You know, I can never react to a Star Trek trailer. The moment I do it, they claim my video. So why bother? Thankfully, Disney is a little bit more lenient, and they understand that if I get excited about Star Wars, that makes a lot of other people excited as well. All right, Peter has found a DVD of Crusade in Jeans on ball.com, which is kind of the Dutch equivalent of Amazon. Yeah, unfortunately, they are pretty expensive. There's a store in Arnhem that sells a lot of used DVDs, so maybe I'll go there by bike in the next week and see if I can find a copy. Star-Lord says, I love these trailers. Yeah. It's funny. The trailer reactions always do best on my YouTube channel. Mugenstein says, the only reason that these series are being removed is greed. They don't want to pay people during a writing strike. Yeah, that's kind of how it feels. Yeah, and that's I don't like that behavior. And I think it's actually damaging to Disney's reputation. So I don't get it. It's not going to save them much money, so why make that move? The writer strike is, of course, also about more than just salaries. It's also about the AI, you know, analyzing what they've written in the past and then replacing these writers. So, yeah. John says, I grew up as an altar boy. Kind of liked the smell, but sometimes made me feel I was going to pass out. Yeah, same here. Same here. And it's just because probably the frankincense was moist. Mountain Finance says, I loved Willow. Was it perfect? No. However, it was a great move in the right direction, and I was ready for more. They didn't officially cancel it, by the way. They might revive it in the future. But I still plan on watching the series before it's taken offline. I still have 5 days, so I'm probably going to watch 2 episodes per day. Because, you know, I just want to check it out. I love Willow. I love fantasy. And it really looks good. Star-Lord says, I would screen record it. Yeah, that's such a hassle. Maybe they'll issue a Blu-ray collection now that they're taking it offline. I don't know. We don't own anything anymore. That's true. There are 50 series and movies that are being removed from Disney+. Maybe even more. We don't know if that's the final list. Something Wicked says, it's a pity the actual show was nothing like that trailer. Yeah, that was what surprised me. The trailer was so awesome. And Margot is popping in saying, hi, Denzel Washington's son. He's a good actor. Oh, you mean in the trailer that I played for the science fiction movie? The creator? Cool. So as father, as son, right? I'll let you know if I make some lembas bread, how that works. Maybe even share the recipe. All right, that's enough for today. Paramount claims that Super Mario Brothers movie, but unblocked it after dispute. Okay, you mean like the trailers? Paramount is just... They've been doing this for years, and it really soured my relationship to the brand. As a content producer, I'm here to promote stuff I like. But if you slap me with a copyright strike, I'm not going to talk about it. I'm not even going to bother. So yeah, hopefully they'll maybe one day they will understand it. But Paramount is for me one of the worst companies, and Warner too. They just don't get it. They don't get how it works nowadays. That's one of the things I have to applaud Disney for. They thankfully, at a very early stage, understood that they needed the fans. And the fans, they are an asset for Disney. A lot of other companies don't get that. All right. Hey, have a wonderful rest of your day. I'm going to post this podcast, and then I'm going to get myself some food. So, see you later.